Okay, everybody, welcome to class. First thing I'm going to do is share the class notes, which I will always do. And here again is my email. Here is my phone number. You can certainly call me or email me or text me at any time. I see what the story is here. It's hard to see who's in the waiting room at the same time as the share. Let me stop the share for a second. See if there's a way for me to keep an eye on the waiting room without toggling back and forth each time. But all right, we'll just persevere. Okay, so there's my screen. So here we are today. We're going to talk about formal communication. And we'll continue talking about a little bit of formal communication tomorrow. Take a look at the structure of the essays. Take a look at MLA Works Cited tomorrow. And then Monday, we will begin in earnest looking at the first document for our first essay. And we'll read that together in class. We'll talk about it. You can brainstorm a little bit about your first essay. And there are a few students joining class now. I'm admitting them one by one as they come. After tomorrow's class, it's a good idea for you to post in the weekly discussion board. You could probably post there after today's class. You'll probably learn enough today to be able to do that in a formal fashion. The goal for the discussion board is for you to use formal communication, formal structure, formal voice, formal vocabulary, all of which I'll be talking about today. So today and tomorrow, we'll be doing a review of the formal aspects of writing and other things you need to know to write the essays. And then starting Monday, we'll dig into the essays in earnest. Next week, we have class Monday, we have class Tuesday, but there's no class on Wednesday, no Zoom class. And then there's a class on Thursday. So you'll get these notes. I hope everybody got them. I posted them and I think I emailed them. But if I didn't, I will do it again. You'll get these notes. So you won't have to take written notes of everything we discussed. These notes will be available to you. Okay, let me just stop there for a second and see if anybody's got any questions about the class at the moment. Maybe you missed class yesterday or you thought of something between today and yesterday. Anything of concern before I go into the discussion?
Professor,
Yes.
for the discussion board, the first every week's discussion board, when is the due date?
Anytime during the week. You have it all 7 days in the week to post it. There's no real due date there. So when you're ready, usually when students are thinking about their essay, they come up with an idea or they come up with an approach, and that's when they have the notion to, oh, I can post this couple of sentences on the discussion board. So that's usually how it works, but really anytime during the week. And if you are exploring ideas or you're asking questions about the ideas, you can certainly do that earlier in the week, and then other people can respond to you. I can respond to you and maybe help you out there.
And for the paragraph we submit on the Blackboard, do we need to write it like an essay or not?
I definitely want you to practice formal structure, which I'm going to talk about today. Formal structure, formal voice, and formal vocabulary in the discussion board. So, and after today's lesson, you'll have a good sense of what I mean by that. I did put some notes in there on the discussion board instructions, but we'll go into it in detail right now.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right, let me just halt for one moment and I'll be right back. Sorry about that. Just needed to grab my drink or I get very dry when I'm talking. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to share the screen and talk with you about formal and informal communication. And I might have mentioned this yesterday, but all of you, or I might not, all of you are rather expert at informal communication already. You do spend your time interacting with people all day long. You communicate, they communicate with you, and you clearly get your point across and understand what they're saying. So my goal here is to give you the formal communication skills so that when the class is over, you'll have both those skills, the formal and the informal communication skills, and then you'll be able to choose, regardless of what situation you're in, you'll be able to choose whether you want to communicate in a formal fashion or in an informal fashion, whatever would be appropriate for the circumstance. Certainly, when you're writing at the college level, that's a point in time when you will want to use your formal communication skills. Maybe on your job, you might want to use your formal communication skills, things of that nature. So let's just look at the three aspects that there are to formal communication, and that is formal structure, formal vocabulary, and formal voice. So we're going to look at those three things today. And tomorrow we'll take a further look in depth in some of these areas. But today we're going to cover formal structure, formal vocabulary, and formal voice. What do I mean by formal communication? Well, formal communication is different than informal communication, chiefly because formal communication is exact, it's precise, and it's clear. Whereas informal communication is vague, can be confusing, and certainly can not be clear. Now, when you're communicating informally with someone, when you're speaking to them face to face, and you say something that is confusing or vague or not clear, usually they have the opportunity to stop you and say, I don't understand, that's not clear, give me an explanation, give me an example, or say it in a different way so that you can get your communication, your point across to the person. Unfortunately, when you're writing, we don't have that opportunity. You can't, when somebody, you write something at one point in time and somebody reads it at another point in time. And that means they can't stop you in the middle of your writing and say, I don't understand, explain it to me, give me an example. So when you're writing and when you're communicating formally, you need to make sure that the point that you're trying to make, what you're trying to say, is clear, precise, and exact so that the person reading it at another point in time will understand it. Okay, so here's an example. Here's a sentence. He hit her back. Think about that. What does that sentence mean? That's a real question. Anybody answer. What do you think that sentence means? He hit her back. What could that sentence mean?
And after she hit him and he hit her back.
Yes, it certainly could mean after she hit him, he hit her in return for hitting him. Could that sentence mean anything else?
For some people, hit can sometimes mean like they hit me back like in a call or a text or something like that. So it could be that she responded back to a comment or something.
Certainly, it could mean that he responded, right? And it could also mean literally he hit her on her back, right? On the back of her body. Here we go, right? So certainly what you said about communicating is yet a third way to think about that. But at a minimum, that this little sentence, he hit her back, could mean two different things. And you wouldn't know, or three, as you pointed out, you wouldn't know which of those meanings this had unless you saw the context sentence before. She hit him, he hit her back. Well, then you could understand it in context. But the idea when you're writing is not to make your reader try to struggle to understand what you're saying. Certainly, your reader can go back and take a look at the sentence before, or can read on and take a look at the next sentence and then figure out what it is you're saying. But that's not this. You don't want your reader to be struggling with understanding what you're saying when you're writing. You might want your reader to struggle with the ideas that you're presenting and what you're trying to say, whether they agree or disagree, but you certainly want them to understand what you're saying. And that's where the idea about formal communication comes into play. When you're more exact, when you're more precise, when you're more clear, then the reader doesn't struggle to understand what you're saying, and they can then think about what you're saying, evaluate what you're saying. They can agree or disagree, but at least you know you're getting your point across and they understand it. So certainly one of the aspects of formal communication, formal written communication, is correct grammar. So we will review some of the grammar stuff, maybe a little today, but mostly tomorrow. One of the key elements of correct grammar is to be writing in complete sentences and to be writing in complete paragraphs. So one of the things I'm going to show you is the kinds of sentences that belong in the different paragraphs that you would put in your essays, looking at that. And of course, essays are what we're writing in a class like this. Our essays, it's going to be 500 words. Really, that's the minimum, but no more than 600 or even 700 words. You really don't want to make your essays very long. The longer an essay gets, the more it turns into a research paper, and that's another structure entirely. So we're really focusing on writing an essay, 500 words, 600 words about a particular topic. I put it right in there like that. And here is the basic outline. Let me just move this down so you can see it all together. Here's the basic outline of a 5-paragraph essay. Let me just stop for a second. Many of you have taken writing classes before, so some of the stuff that I'm presenting to you will be rather familiar to you, which is great, and it serves as a review. Some of you might not have thought about writing in the fashion that I'm presenting it, so be a little bit more new for you. That's okay. I do cover a lot of basic material in these two classes, just to make sure that everybody's on the same page. So again, if you keep seeing things that are familiar to you and you know them and you understand them and you recognize them, that's just fine. I'll try to present it in a way that it's not boring, and I'll try to infuse into it some things that might be a new way of thinking about things. But if you recognize everything that I'm saying, that's just great. It means you'll be doing well in this class. Okay, so here's the basic structure of an essay. Introduction, 3 what we call body paragraphs, and a conclusion. Just to repeat what I said. So now what I'm going to do is give you in detail the types of sentences that belong in each of these different kinds of paragraphs. And I'll start with the body paragraphs. So the first sentence in your body paragraph is what we call the topic sentence. And the topic sentence expresses the main idea of that paragraph. Each paragraph focuses on a main idea, and the topic sentence is the sentence that expresses that main idea. Now, I put it there as the first sentence in the paragraph, but it really doesn't have to be the first sentence in the paragraph. It could be in the middle of the paragraph, could be at the end of the paragraph. It doesn't even have to be one sentence. The main idea of the paragraph could be expressed in a piece of this sentence, in a piece of that sentence, and even in a piece of another sentence. But for beginning writers, if you're not comfortable writing, or you're just starting to write, or you really just want to learn to write in this fashion, the best thing to do is to make the topic sentence the first sentence in your paragraph. One of the things that is good to do with these topic sentences, with these first sentences of each paragraph, and remember, you're going to have 3. Usually we have 5 paragraphs in the essay, and the reason we have 5 paragraphs in the essay is that an easy way to get to 500 or 600 words. So if you write out all the sentences that I'll be giving you in the different paragraphs that are required, you will easily get to the 500 or 600 words. Some people get a little nervous in the beginning. How am I going to write so many words? After a while, you realize that 500 or 600 words is really not that many words. So in any case, one of the things you can do with your topic sentences is you can use what we call emphatic order. Emphatic order is simply a device, a literary device, that's used in order to organize thoughts. When your thoughts are organized, it's easier for your readers to follow them. In fact, the whole process of writing is a process of thinking, and often the writer organizes we organize our own thoughts when we're writing. They're not necessarily organized before we start to put them on paper. There are some people, and you may be one of them, who have very organized minds and know exactly what you're going to write, and you just sit down and write something straight out. But most of us, like me, we need to struggle a little bit with the ideas we're expressing and write them down and reorganize them, move them around, move them throughout the essay, and go through a number of different drafts in order to express what we want to say clearly. Writing is really a process, and it's a process of putting your ideas down on paper and then looking at them, analyzing them, seeing if one idea flows correctly, appropriately to the next so that the reader can follow them, and then reorganizing things so that your communication is clear. So you really you don't feel as if you need to be able to sit down and write everything out without having to change anything. Really, editing and changing and proofreading and taking a look at your writing and reorganizing things is the process that we go through when we're writing. It's a thinking process. So, and what's emphatic order? Emphatic order is simply when in your first paragraph, your first body paragraph, you might start your topic sentence with the first idea that relates to whatever it is you're writing about would be, and so your sentence would start the first idea or the first important aspect or the first idea that someone should consider, and use that word, the first. And in your second paragraph, you simply start with the second idea that's important or the second key notion related to this. And in the third paragraph, you use the third idea or the third notion, something like that. So you have first, second, third in your 3-body paragraphs. Or you might use firstly, secondly, thirdly, or you might use first of all, second of all, third of all. Any of those structures where it's really 1, 2, 3, first, second, third, is emphatic order. It's emphatic because it's highly structured, strong order. When you say first, second, third, you're clearly ordering the ideas for your reader. And what's more, that first, second, third, that emphatic order not only organizes the ideas and orders the ideas, but it gives you an automatic transition. Some of you who've been studying writing know about transitions. It gives you an automatic transition from one paragraph to the next. If you start your first paragraph with first of all, and then your second paragraph, second of all, well, that second of all statement is your transition. The reader knows that you're moving on to a new, or third of all, the reader knows you're moving on to a new idea simply from using firstly, secondly, thirdly, or anything like that. So emphatic order is a really useful way, especially for beginning writers, for you to order your body paragraphs, order your ideas. Okay, so the first sentence, and a little later, I have a more detailed outline, a little further down. I have a more detailed outline to share with you where I have some more examples of the things that I'm saying here. So the first round that I'm talking about will be sort of the higher level view, and then we'll go to it in slightly more detail. And remember, you're getting all these notes, so you don't need to take all the notes by yourself. Just think about what I'm saying. Okay, so the first sentence in each body paragraph is the topic sentence. Then comes the second sentence. And this is one of the things that makes the writing more formal. Throughout formal writing, one of the things that you do is you make sure that the words that you're using are understood by your reader in the way you want them to be understood. You might know there's a lot of words in English, and many of the words in English, they have many different meanings. Take the word love. If you simply said, this essay is about love or something like that, then the reader could be thinking, what kind of love is that writer talking about? Is it romantic love? Is it loving ice cream? Is it loving your pet? Is it loving your mother? What kind of love are they talking about? So the idea is when you use a term in your topic sentence, when you use a term, a word that needs to be defined, that needs to be clarified, needs to be made exact, precise, and clear, that you do so. Here, suppose my topic sentence was, love is the most powerful emotion in the world. Okay, that's fine. First of all, love is the most powerful emotion in the world. Why then my next sentence might be, the love being referred to here is romantic love. So that way you have your topic sentence, you mention that word love, and then in your next sentence, you clarify or define what that term means. Sometimes you don't need to do that, but most often you do, since words in English have so many different meanings. You want to make sure that your reader understands the word in the way that you're expressing it. So defining the terms is something that we do often in formal writing, clarifying, making sure that the reader understands exactly what we're saying. Once again, you don't have an opportunity to explain it to them. They can't say to you, I don't understand. You need to build into your writing that understanding. You perhaps have read things yourself at other times, and you've read them and you might have said to yourself, I don't understand what this writer's talking about. Well, that wouldn't be good writing. That writer obviously didn't take those extra steps to make sure that the readers would understand what he or she was saying. Okay, so start your paragraph with topic sentence. Take a look at that topic sentence and see if there are any terms that you need to clarify. And then the next thing is really, really important. This is the role of the writer. The role of the writer is to express what's important about the ideas that you're presenting. And therefore, after you've made your topic sentence and you define your terms, you make some kind of statement of importance. Basically, you're answering the question, why is this main idea, right? Each paragraph has a main idea. The topic sentence expresses the main idea. So what you're doing down here in the statement of importance is you're answering the question, what's important about this? Why should the reader care, right? So you need to clue the reader in as to why it's important. And sometimes this is, you could actually ask the question. Sometimes that could be, why is this statement about love important? You could actually ask a question. You could put it that way. Or it could even be a sentence that starts, this idea, this concept is important because, and then you explain the significance, the importance of that idea. So there you have the first three: topic sentence, define your terms, statement of importance. Once again, you need, and we do this continuously in formal writing, is we take a look at that statement of importance and we see, is there any, have I used any words there that need to be clarified? Can the reader be confused about what I'm saying? Could they take it a different way? And so I need to make sure that the statement of importance, by in the next couple of sentences clarifying any terms I use, I need to make sure that that statement of importance is clear to the reader. That's what we're always doing when we're writing. We're always being careful to make sure that anyone who reads our writing can understand exactly what we're saying. Once again, you can't have, not everybody's always going to agree with you, but you certainly as a writer can make sure that you're clear and that they understand what you're saying. That's your goal. And then you do something else. That's the hallmark of formal writing. You provide an example. Not just any example, but an example that illustrates the importance of the main idea that you're expressing. Right? The paragraph is about some main idea. That main idea is important. And then you give your reader an example of how or why or in what way that main idea is important. So see how these sentences all relate to each other. They all have a purpose in the paragraph. They're all moving towards communicating the significance of what you're saying, communicating what you're saying, and then communicating the significance of what you're saying to your reader. When you're doing your essays for this class, your examples could come from the documents we read. Your examples could come from the research that you do, because you will need to get an outside source for the different essays. Your examples could come from your own experience. Your examples could be historical examples, they could be factual examples, or they could be examples that you create from your own mind, that you make up in order to illustrate what's going on. So the important point about the example is that it serves to illustrate the importance of the main idea. And then you take one more step, which is part of the formal writing process. You explain that example. Don't leave it up to the reader to figure out how that example illustrates the importance of the main idea. You take that step and explain to the reader how and why the example shows the importance of the main idea. That ties the whole thing together. The reader, you've told the reader what's important, you've made a statement, you've told the reader how it's important, you've given an example of why it's important, and you've explained how or why it's important. Those are basically the sentences that you need in the body paragraphs. The body paragraphs certainly represent the main part of your essay. Some essays sometimes you have only 2 body paragraphs because sometimes you're comparing 2 things. Sometimes you might have 4 body paragraphs because you have 4 major points that you're making. You still want to stick to that 500 to 800 word essay, but you could have more paragraphs. Nevertheless, this is the structure that you should strive for in your paragraphs. I gave down here a little bit about emphatic order. I talked about this, right? Is that emphatic order, first, second, third, or firstly, secondly, or thirdly, or anything like that. Obviously, if you're counting words, if you're worried about words, that's one word right there, first, right? Second, that's a one word. And then down here, there are what? 9 words that, is it 9? It's 9 or 10 words that say first, right? The first major idea related to this thesis is, right? So if you're looking to count words and you want to build up words, don't just use first, use an expression such as this. Right? But any of these are good. And you don't have to use emphatic order. I'm just recommending it certainly for beginning writers and for starting, because it makes it easier for you to write, orders of things for you, provides those built-in transitions for you. So it often makes your essay hang together much better. Lots of different ways to do this. And all of my suggestions to you are just that. They're suggestions. Some of you are better writers than others. Some of you already have your own writing style. I don't want to change your writing style. I do want your writing to move to a more formal structure. But if you have a good logical way of explaining what it is you're saying and achieve the ends of having the reader understand clearly and exactly and precisely what it is you're saying, then you're doing a fine job. Others might be a little less comfortable with the writing process and you need to learn a little more. So I give you these steps. These are really steps in the process. You can build your paragraphs with the sentences that I've given you, and then after a while you'll develop your own style, and you'll change it, you'll fool around with it, you'll improve it. All right, so I'm really giving you a minimum starting point with these ideas. Okay, so those are the sentences that belong in the body paragraphs. Let's take a look at the introduction, and then we'll take a look at the conclusion. Here are the sentences that belong in the introduction. Very similar to the body paragraphs. First sentence in the introduction is what we call the thesis statement. Remember, the first sentence in the body paragraph was the topic sentence. The first sentence in the introduction is the thesis sentence. The topic sentence expresses the main idea of the paragraph. The thesis statement expresses the overall idea of the essay itself. So they play similar roles, just they're slightly different. And once again, when you take a look at your thesis statement, make sure that your terms are clear, that the words that you're using won't be confusing to the reader, that it means what you want it to mean and only what you want it to mean. It doesn't mean several different things, and the reader has to figure out which one you mean. So clarity is really important. And once again, you make a statement of importance. Why is this thesis important? Who cares? Cares about what you're writing, or to whom is it important? What about it makes it significant? You would think about answering these questions in that statement of importance. That's really what you're trying to do. And once again, you need to make sure that you define your terms. Sometimes your statement of importance can be 2 or 3 sentences. It's not always just one sentence. And then if you write 2 or 3 sentences, sometimes you use words that you will need to clarify and make sure that the reader understands what the words are. So think about that. That's one of the key elements of the formal writing, is to make sure that your reader understands exactly what you're saying. Here's something that's different in the introduction. We do not provide examples in the introduction. The introduction is a general statement, right, about the whole essay. And so we deal with general ideas in the introduction, and we deal with general ideas in the conclusion. The body paragraphs are where you have your specific ideas. And that's why you can have specific examples, because you're dealing with the specifics, the elements of the overall idea. And then some people really like to do this. They like to preview what's going to come next in your essay. So if you're writing about life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, you might say in this sentence here, the ideas about life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness will be discussed below, something like that. You don't always have to do that. Sometimes you want to do that. What you do want to do, however, is you definitely want to paraphrase your thesis statement. You start out with your thesis statement, and then you paraphrase it at the end. Paraphrasing is when you express the same idea in different words or in a different way. I have some paraphrasing techniques that I'll show you a little later on. I don't want to take a side trip into paraphrasing right now. But basically, paraphrasing means saying the same thing in different words, making the same point, expressing the same main idea as you did in your thesis statement, but saying it slightly differently. The reason we do that is because one of the things that you definitely don't want to do when you're writing is to repeat the same words in the same order over and over again. Readers notice that. Readers notice when you're repeating yourself. They notice when you're using the same words in the same way over and over again. And when you do that, what happens is that the reader says to himself or herself, I know what this writer's saying. They've said this before. Here they are repeating themselves. And they stop paying as much attention. And then you don't want that. You want your reader to be paying attention to what you're saying. After all, you're saying something important and you're expressing what's important about it. You want them to be thinking about it. You don't want them to turn off and start thinking about something else, ice cream or whatever it might be, because they think you're repeating yourself. So paraphrasing is the technique that writers use to repeat themselves, but not to repeat themselves in exactly the same way. The reader will find when they read a paraphrased statement, they might say, oh yeah, I recognize that idea, but at least they've thought about it and they've made the connection that you want them to make, rather than saying, oh, the writer's repeating himself. I don't want to keep reading this, it's boring. So we'll talk about paraphrasing techniques a little bit later, but that's an important writing skill, and we often use that. So here are the sentences that belong in introduction. Let's take a look at the conclusion. Here are the sentences that belong in the conclusion. And the first thing you'll notice here is that there's a lot of paraphrasing that goes on in the conclusion. The conclusion is actually the easiest thing to write. In a way, you're summarizing what it is that you've said already. And the way you do that is you take your thesis statement and your topic sentences and you paraphrase them once again, so that you express the main idea of your essay, and then you express the main idea of the first body paragraph and of the second body paragraph and of the third body paragraph, but not with exactly the same words in exactly the same order that you did when you wrote your initial thesis statement or your initial topic sentences. You move them around a little, you change them around a little bit so that the reader can read them in sort of a new experience reading them and doesn't feel that you're just repeating yourself over and over again. And lastly, you can end with yet another paraphrase of your thesis statement. So you can see this paraphrasing technique, this skill, is something you definitely need to know something about so that you can employ it in your writing. No examples in the conclusion. Just like the introduction, the conclusion is a general statement, and the examples are specific, and they belong in the body paragraphs. And this is another thing. Nothing new in the conclusion. If there was something important to your idea, to your thesis, to your essay, then you need to include it in your essay. Don't just throw something new in at the end because it sounds exciting or interesting. No, if it's exciting and interesting and germane and important to your topic, to your idea, to what you're trying to say, then include it in your essay, include it in the body of your essay. Okay, so there's your formal essay. Introduction, body paragraphs, conclusion. Here it is again. And again, I'm giving you these notes so you don't have to, scribble them down. But here I have a more detailed outline in outline form of the sentences that belong in the introduction. Here's a little link to help you learn more about paraphrasing. So you can use that link to go to that site. They'll talk about some of the paraphrasing techniques, so you can see that. Here are the body paragraphs, and again, this repeats. It's the same. First body paragraph, second body paragraph, third body paragraph. The structure is all the same. And then here comes the conclusion. Again, I just showed you that with the paraphrasing. So we will talk about paraphrasing together a little bit later, but I don't want to belabor everything. So let me just stop at that one moment right there. Make sure everybody, nobody's waiting. That's good. So that's the structure of formal communication. Does anybody want to respond or ask a question or something that needs to be clarified about that? Anything? No is good.
Professor,
Yes.
for conclusion, I noticed that in the notes you say no new things in the conclusion, but can we give about our topic, can we give some suggestion or some initiatives in our conclusion?
If it's important to your topic, it should have appeared in your essay. If it appears in your essay, you can certainly repeat it. Yes. If in the body of your essay, you're thinking that people want to know more about, whatever the suggestion may be, then you should put it in the body. The rules I'm not really giving you rules that are hard and fast. I'm more giving you guidance about the way to do it. So it's not that it's a rule that you shouldn't put anything new in there. It's just that sometimes, often I see students writing, when they write, they'll throw in some idea from left field, something that they think relates to the topic, but they haven't explained the relationship that idea has to the topic. And that's not good writing. So it's not so much I'm giving you rules that you have to follow, as much as it is I'm giving you principles in order for you to structure your writing in the best way. If you feel that there's something that you need to include in your conclusion that is new in the sense of giving a suggestion or a direction or some comment or something like that, then put it in there. Because after having written an essay, if you think there's something more you want to say, sort of to cap it off in some way or to enhance it in some way, go ahead and do it. I mean, you're the writer, and you're the one who is responsible for making sure that the ideas that you're expressing are getting through to your reader, and you determine the best way to do that, not me. I'll write my way, you write it your way. So again, I'm not giving you rules, I'm giving you guidance, and mostly I'm giving you guidance about how to do this if you don't know what to do at all, because sometimes that's the case, often that's the case. Again, some of you are better writers, and you take a look at what I'm giving you and you say, I don't want to do it that way. I want to do it my way. Well, go ahead, do it your way. I'm not going to be grading you on the basis of whether you're following my essay outline. as much as I'll be grading you on how well you're communicating your ideas. And so do it in any way, do it the best way that you think, do it in the way that you think is best.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, sure.
Sorry, so
yeah.
I'm away from like my Blackboard and other stuff. So the way you want us to write it, is that only for essay number 1 or all 3 essays?
This is basically the structure of formal writing, period.
Okay, okay,
Even if you were writing a 20-page research paper, this is what you would,
okay,
this is the kind of thing that you need to do in the introduction, kind of thing you need to do in the body paragraphs, kind of thing you need to do in the conclusion. Of course, a longer piece of writing, you're doing different things, so it's not quite as easy, right? For the short
yeah,
essay, this is, it's pretty easy.
yeah, okay.
Sure.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Anybody else want to react in some way?
Professor,
Yes.
okay. Can I use the question sentence in conclusion? Of course, I will put an affirmative answer. So can I use the question sentence?
Sure, absolutely. You can use the question sentence anytime, introduction, body paragraph, conclusion, anytime you feel it's an effective way to communicate with your reader. Absolutely. No, there's no reason not to do that at all. Exclamation point is a different kind of punctuation. Usually we don't put an exclamation point in an essay like this because an exclamation point usually communicates surprise or something like that. And you're really not trying to surprise your readers, rather you're trying to communicate ideas to them and have them think about it. But questions are always an effective way to communicate things if you do them right, and there's no reason not to use them in the conclusion or anyplace else.
Okay, thank you, Professor.
Sure, sure. Anybody else? In the classroom, I would look around and see who's, dying to ask a question, but I can't see that from here. All right, let's move on. Okay, so I'm going to share the screen again. And I just was showing you that you have that detailed outline. I want to talk about the next element of formal communication. We just looked at formal structure. The next element is formal voice. This is really, really important. This is one of the things that makes formal communication totally different from informal communication. Because formal structure is useful, and part of formal structure is MLA formatting or APA formatting, and using quotations and using sources and things of that nature, which we'll look at probably tomorrow. And so formal structure has a lot of elements to it, but formal voice is really, really clear. What it means is that in formal writing, what you're expressing is fact or truth. You're not trying to express an opinion. Now, of course, if you get to be an expert in your field and you have an expert opinion about something years from now, that's a totally different story. But really, when we're writing in the college level writing or any formal writing, what we're trying to do is express the truth, is express facts, not opinions. So the way you do that is you write in the third person. Now, this is something that students sometimes need a lot of practice with, because it doesn't come naturally. Naturally, we think about ourselves and others, and when we're communicating with people informally, we want to associate ourselves with them. We want to get close with them. We want them to feel what we're saying. And those are all fine things for informal communication and probably for creative writing. But for this kind of formal writing, where you're writing about a topic and expressing the significance of a topic, you want to write exclusively in the third person. I'm going to talk about this right now, but I will say this. It does take some students, some of you get this right away, some of you it'll take 2 or 3 essays before you are able to write completely in the third person. Sometimes even in the final, the first and second person formats will sneak in, because it's something that's easy to forget. But it really should be foremost on your mind. Okay, what is this? Here we are. First person, I think it's raining outside. Clearly an opinion. If I say to you, I think it's raining outside, what do you know? You don't know whether it's raining outside or not. You do know that I think it's raining outside, but it could not be raining. Not fact, not truth. Even the second person here, I'll ask you, do you think it's raining outside? Once again, you can answer yes, you can answer no, but what do I know? I only know what you think. I don't know the truth of the matter. Rather, in third person, the statement, it is raining outside, well, that's clearly an attempt to express a fact. That's clearly an attempt to say the truth. I could be incorrect. That's another judgment entirely, but the sentence purports to be stating the truth, stating the fact, not an opinion. And that's this is the essence of formal voice. In formal voice, we're looking for the truth, we're looking for facts, we're not looking for opinions. Here's a little chart. We call this column over here, we call this voice or case or person. Maybe some of you are familiar with this, maybe not. We're getting into a little grammar here, I understand. So we call first person, first voice, first case, second person, third person. This over here, we call number. Number means singular, one, or plural, more than one, right? Okay, we just line these things up a little better. And so first and second person in red, that's what we want to avoid in formal writing. And then third person, that's definitely what we want to use in formal writing. Now you'll notice singular is one, plural is more than one. So here in the third person, we have the singular pronouns. And when we have these singular pronouns with the verbs, that's where we use the S. Sometimes this can be confusing because it's plural nouns that use the S. Here, boat. Boats, right? So plural nouns use the S, but singular verbs use the S. I'll make it a different color. There we go. And sometimes this can be confusing, especially if English is not your first language. So just try to keep in mind that that S is there in third person singular for the verbs, and then the S is there for plural. Now these days, to be gender neutral, sometimes the pronoun they is used as a singular pronoun. It's really a plural pronoun, but I'll put it over here because some people find that acceptable. But should you use the they as a singular pronoun, you need to conjugate it as a plural pronoun. You don't put an S at the end of it when it's they. Okay, so just keep this in mind. You'll probably see a chart like this different times during the term. And a couple things to remember here. The formats for third person singular, where you have the S, and then the whole idea of writing in the third person, not using I, me, you, we, us, your, yours, any of those. We just keep those pronouns out. So when you write your essays and you send them in to me, you might have not always used third person. So I would then, well, I give you a lot of different feedback. One of the things I'll usually do is give you some general feedback on your essay at the top, at the beginning. And I might say, use third person exclusively because in your essay, you use the word you, or you use the word I, or you use the word we. And usually I will indicate, I will highlight that, and I use a word for this so you can see the different colors. So I usually highlight that in your essay if you've done that, and then put a general statement up front, use third person only, and sometimes I'll even list the first or second person pronouns that you used in the essay, as well as mark them in red. It's all right. It happens. It takes a while, as I said, sometimes for students to recognize that you need to write exclusively in the third person. So that's an adjustment, but that's one of the things that makes your writing formal, because once again, you want to be expressing fact and truth and not opinion. Reason for that is everybody has an opinion. So if you're expressing an opinion, why should anybody, I mean, unless they respect you as an individual and they think you as an individual are special in some way, which is why an expert could express an opinion. Why does anybody care what you think? I mean, it's just what you think. I think something different than you. You could be right, I could be wrong. In formal writing, we're searching for the truth. We're searching for facts. That's why we do research. That's why we use sources. That's why we use scholarly sources. That's why we use quotations. That's why we use quotations from sources that other people have recognized as valuable. And it's a whole intellectual exercise where we're talking about facts. We're talking about the truth. We're trying to understand the world the way it is, not simply what somebody thinks about the world, but how the world actually is. Okay, so formal voice is absolutely something to pay attention to. Here are the words to eliminate, right? You don't want to use any of these words in your writing. You could use these. Here are just some more examples, right? Here, I am sure that nursing is a fine career. It's a wonderful sentence, but it's an opinion, right? Better to say nursing is a fine career. Then you're expressing an opinion because fine is, but you're expressing it in the third person. So it sounds more like fact. I know it's a little tricky because everything that you think and everything that you write is your opinion. But what you want to do is you want to express it in a factual way, so that you're not emphasizing the notion that it's your opinion as much as you're emphasizing the notion that you consider this to be fact, you consider this to be truth, and you want your reader to accept it as fact or as truth. Okay, so let me stop there. See if anybody has any questions about formal voice. Anything on your mind there? Anything I wasn't clear about? Something that doesn't make sense? Anything like that? Okay. Let's move on to the last piece of formal writing, which is formal vocabulary. Once again, the goal here when you're writing in a formal fashion is to be precise, exact, and clear. So, and there are so many words in English that are informal because they have so many different meanings. And when you use words that have different meanings, you have to over and over again clarify what it is you're saying, because what it is you're saying could mean so many different things. So what you really want to do is use words that have limited meaning or precise meanings so that you can, it's easier for you to be clear and exact and precise in what you're saying. Now, there are far too many informal words in the English language for me to even list them all. And even some formal words turn out to be informal words if you use them in a certain way. So what I've done is I've picked out the 10 most frequently used informal words that you should avoid in your formal writing. Actually, there's many informal words, as I said, and after a while, you'll get used to the notion of what's formal and informal in terms of vocabulary. And over your college career, as you write more and more, you'll be able to weed out the informal words and include the formal ones or their formal equivalents on your own. And this list is a list of the top 10. Later on, I'll be pointing out some other words that are not in the top 10 list, but are also frequently used informal words, so that you should avoid those. What happens in your writing when you filter out the informal words and use the formal words instead, is that the entire cast of your writing becomes more formal. And, in some other languages, some of you know other languages, and in other languages, there are real formal ways of expressing and communicating, and then there are very informal ones. And English is the same way. It's just very democratic language. So we mix up the informal and the formal all the time. So again, I'm going to show you right now, I'm going to give you this list of the words that you really should avoid using in your formal writing. And the first one is the word get. This one can mean so many different things. If I say to you, go get the book, what does that word get mean? It could mean fetch the book. It could mean buy the book. It could mean steal the book. Who knows what that word get means? And the problem in writing is that if you use a word such as get, your reader has to figure out what you, oh, here's a student. Sorry, I finally let that student in, sorry. If you use the word get in your formal writing, this reader has to figure out what you mean by the word get. That's okay, they can usually do that in the context of a sentence. It's not that there's anything wrong with the word get. It's just that that word get could mean so many different things that when your reader reads the word get in your sentence, they have to take a little piece of their mind, a little piece of their attention, and determine what that word means. And that's not what you want to do when you're writing. You want your reader to understand what you're saying without having to struggle to understand it. They can disagree with it. They can struggle to find out what's wrong with it. They can do anything they want with it. But what you definitely want is you definitely want them to understand it. And so you don't want to use words that are going to confuse them in any way or make them work harder to understand what you're saying. So if you say, go get that book, and you mean buy the book, simply say, go buy that book or go purchase that book. If you want them to steal the book, then say, go steal that book. Don't make them figure out what you mean. And so again, there are many words like this in English. This is the chief word, get, and the word got, which is the past tense, and the word gotten, which is the past participle. Those are words to stay away from. And here in this column where it says do use, these are words you know. There are no words in here that you don't know. Here, you get sick, well, you catch a cold or you contract an illness, right? You get older, meaning you become older or you grow older, or you get what I'm saying, meaning you understand or you comprehend what I'm saying. So these are words you know. It's not that you don't know the formal, in this case, it's not that you don't know the formal words, you know them very well. It's that you would not necessarily think to eliminate the get and to use the more formal words. So once again, when you write an essay, sometimes these informal words will sneak in. Sometimes it'll be words that I didn't tell you were informal, but I should have. And so I'll tell you when you use them in the essay. I might say at the top in the beginning, use more formal vocabulary. And then in the essay itself, I would point out those informal words and, give you those alternatives. Certainly the ones on the list I'm giving you now, so we won't have to repeat them over and over again. And when you proofread your essays, right, that's something you should do. You write your draft, even if it's a first draft, before you hand it in, you should go over it yourself for formal structure, formal voice, make sure you're using third person, and formal vocabulary. Make sure that you don't have these informal words in there. Not to worry, if you use formal voice or you use informal vocabulary, I will point them out to you. So don't worry, I'll backstop you. Remember, this class is for learning, right? And for practice. That's the whole idea here. So we need you to do the writing so you can get the feedback so you can understand how to change it, how to improve it. Okay, so the first word not to use is get. Here are a number of alternatives. Really, it can mean so many things. I can only put a few different alternatives down here. Here's the next word, like. And really, the only time you should use the word like is when you're expressing preference. I like chocolate, I like vanilla, I like boys, I like girls, whatever it is. When you're expressing preference, that's the appropriate formal way to use the word like. Don't use like to mean, for example. Not a man went to the store and bought fruit like apples, pears, and oranges. No, man went to the store and bought fruit, for example, apples, pears, and oranges, or such as apples, pears, or oranges. So we do need to use that, for example. Remember, we're going to put examples in all of our body paragraphs. So often you will be saying, for example, or such as, or something like that. Don't use the word like to introduce those examples. Use for example, or such as, or something like that. Also,
It's so sorry. It's so funny that you mentioned that because I always use the word like in every sentence or in my text messages.
and this is one of those, very good. This is one of those cases where when you make a small change such as this, notice I didn't say a small change like this. I said a small change such as this. When you make a small change such as this, your expression becomes more formal, simply because you're not using that commonly used word like, which everybody hears all the time and people use all the time, and you're using different words. In this case, the word such as, or for example. So these are small, subtle changes in the way you write. But when they're all taken together throughout your writing, then it raises the level of your writing to a more formal level. And when you express yourself in a more formal fashion, your readers give your writing more respect. And that's what you want. You want your reader to respect your writing. You want your reader to think about your writing, to understand your writing. They can agree or disagree, but you certainly want them to meet your writing head on. And when they respect it, they will give it more thought, they will give it more, and they'll work harder at understanding what you're saying. So one of the things about switching from the informal words to the more formal words is that it does this, and it does this in a sort of a cumulative way. So every third, every sixth, every ninth sentence, you've expressed it in a more formal fashion, and that comes across to your readers. It especially comes across to your readers if your readers are college teachers. Your college teachers might not always realize, they're not English professors, they might not always realize that what you're doing is writing in a more formal way, using formal voice, using formal vocabulary, using formal structure. They may not realize that that's what you're doing, but they certainly will recognize that the work that they're reading is presented in a more formal fashion, and they give it more respect, and you'll get a better grade. So just in a practical way, it's very good to be to move from these informal words to the more formal ones. And once again, these here in this column are words that you already know. It's not as if I'm saying learn new words here. No, I'm saying don't use the informal words, the all-purpose words. Use words that are more specific. And it's a small step, but makes a very big difference. Here's another one. So, I don't remember if this is split up between two boxes or no. Yes, it is. Okay. Nope, it's not. There we are. So that word so, which sneaks into my vocabulary all the time, is another one of those words that it would be better to substitute any of these words for instead. Often we use the word so for therefore. So use these words, right? Man went to the store, so he bought fruit. No, so what you should do is move over to words such as these instead of the word so. And when you do that, when you start a sentence with therefore, or consequently, or as a result, or any of these words here, you start that sentence with that word, and then you follow the word with a comma. And once again, that helps to create the formal structure in your sentences. This meaning of so, I like you so much, is again a common informal way of using that word. We have so many and so much, those expressions, so many and so much. Sometimes it's difficult to find a substitute for the phrase so many or so much. But once again, when you do that, and you can find that on your own, when you do that, when you make those kinds of changes, it adds to the more formal aspect of your writing, makes your writing come across more formally. Therefore, try to do that. One more, again, there's only 10 of these, so we're halfway through the list. This word too, T-O-O, never use. It's really the second word that English language learners learn when they're young. First is me, and then there's too. So when your brother gets a cookie, you can say me too, right? So don't use to, just never use it. When you want to say and, you can use and, you can use also, you can use as well, you can use in addition. Here, once again, there are a bunch of words here that you're familiar with, and you should use these instead of the word to when you want to say and. Moreover, try not to start sentences with these two words. Try to start sentences with these words, which mean and. Again, that's one of those little things about writing. I'll be pointing that out to you again. Here are those expressions: too many, too much. Again, avoid that T-O-O. What these expressions communicate is the concept of excess. So too many, too much, excess. So you can use an excessive amount, or you can use excessively or overabundance. It's tricky. It's very tricky to find substitutes for so many and so much, or too many and too much. Sometimes what we have to do is restructure our sentence when we've used an expression such as so many or too many. Sometimes we have to restructure the sentence in order to avoid using that T-O-O or that S-O. And this is another aspect of how your writing becomes more formal, rather than that simple sentence structure that allows you to use the shortcut of too many or too much. You need to rearrange the words and express it in a different way to communicate that idea of excess or that idea of abundance. So therefore, try to switch from so and T-O-O. And that's a key point there. Often when you move from the informal words to the formal words, it makes you change your sentence structure to a more formal sentence structure. And once again, that is one of those small things that accumulate into your writing that gives all of your writing a more formal cast. And once again, more formal writing will engender more respect on the part of your reader, and people will think you do a better job writing, and you will be doing a better job writing. Here's another expression here. A lot of times, a lot of people use this. And again, there are many ways to express that concept of a lot of. So try to keep this one out of your writing and use any of these kinds of words. You know these words. Again, it's not a situation where you don't know the words. It's only a situation of, oh, I should move from so and to and a lot of to many, numerous, countless, several, words of that nature. And then, so those are really the 5 words there of saying don't use them. Then there's these words I say use them less frequently. I've already talked about and. Try not to use it at the beginning of the sentence. At the beginning of the sentence, use these more formal equivalents of the word and. And is the chief word we use for conjunction, for bringing things together. So therefore, we need to use the word and. Jack and Jill went up the hill. You can't avoid using it, but you can avoid using it at the beginning of a sentence. So don't start sentences with and. Similarly, the word but is our chief way of showing an exception to things. And there are numerous words to express the idea of but, yet, however, although, nevertheless, on the contrary, on the other hand, nonetheless, you can see it's a whole list here. So use these words, and certainly don't use the word but at the beginning of the sentence. You have many alternatives, and I'm sure just looking at these, you know all these words. They're not unfamiliar to you. So once again, it's a matter of taking the informal word, recognizing that it's an informal word, and using the formal equivalent. Once again, you can use the word but in a sentence somewhere, but. However, you're only writing 500 or 600 words. You should use the word but once if you're going to use it, and use any of these others. There's many, many words to express that idea. Here's one that's also used much too much as an informal word. This one's a little more subtle. We should really reserve the word just for the concept of justice. The concept of justice is a very important concept. Economic justice, social justice, criminal justice, whatever it may be. There's lots of talk about justice. So we should really reserve that word just for when we're talking about justice. And here are a number of words that we use the word just to mean. Again, I'm looking at those words, and there's probably no words there that you don't know. So I suggest to you, use any of these in place of the word just in your writing. And again, sometimes you might need to restructure your sentence in order to move from just to another word. But it will definitely improve your writing and make it more formal. And there's two more, just two more, bear with me. One of them is since. Again, we should reserve since for time. Just use it since I started writing in a more formal fashion. I don't use the word since to mean because. Try not to use the word since to mean because. Use because, that's just fine, it's a great word. But don't use because at the beginning of the sentence. Put that because in the middle of the sentence. Because expresses the relationship between two things. This because that, and therefore it should be in the middle. Don't put it at the beginning. And here are some alternatives that you can use as well. And then lastly is the word do. We use that word do all the time to mean, do is our main word for action. Every action is a do. And every action that there is has an actual verb that describes what that action is. So in order to be more precise, more exact, more clear, don't use that word do, use the verb that expresses the action that you're trying to express. And this is a real effort here to be more exact, clear, and precise. And that's it for today. I know I threw a lot of things at you. Chiefly, it's all about formal communication, formal voice, formal structure, formal vocabulary. When you could now go into the discussion and practice that, try to write in a more formal way, write one sentence about human nature and don't say, I think human nature is varied. Say, human nature is varied, right? Write it in the third person. That's a good way to practice the kind of thing I was talking about today. Tomorrow I have another slew of formal writing things to throw at you. But I'm going to send you these notes. I'm going to post these notes. You can refer to these notes and try to let the ideas sink in so that when you practice it in the discussion, and then when you get to writing your essay next week, try to put them into practice in the essay itself. And message down there. Somebody's messaging me. Any questions? Anybody have a comment, a reaction? Okay. I'm just reading the chat. Anybody have anything they want to ask about? Anything not clear?
Yes, Professor. Professor, I add this class today, so I didn't join the class yesterday. So I didn't get anything on my Blackboard. So
Okay, so today in Blackboard, this afternoon, just before class, in the announcement section of Blackboard, I posted the link to the YouTube recording of the class we had yesterday. So you should be able to go in there and get that. In fact, I'll find it and I'll put it here in the I'll put it, stay around, and I'll put it in the message here. I just have to find it. I want to keep everybody here for that. Anything else? Anybody have any comment, question, concern? Anything they want to ask about? Okay, so really, it's all right. So, Raki, if that's the way you say your name, stay in class, and I'll put the link in the chat for you, so you can get to that.
All right, Professor. Thank you.
Okay. For everybody else, you're free to go. I'll see you tomorrow. Think about what we talked about and just keep these things in mind when you're writing. That's it.
Okay, thank you, Professor. Have a nice day.
Okay, you too.
Thank you.
Thank
Can you
you.
please,
Thank you,
can you
Professor.
please